The 5 most banned LGBTQ books in America. This is the focus group.
They're all business, except when they're not. It's the Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash.
Welcome to the Focus Group. John Nash here with my good friend and co-host, Mr. Tim Bennett. Find us every week at focusgroupradio.com, on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, and check out our Tuesday podcast as well, which is called TFG Unbuttoned. 3 stories, 20 minutes, all the news that's fit to print, as we say. And we want give a big thanks to Deep Discount for being a partner of ours here on the Focus Group. You can check out Deep Discount by going to focusgroupradio.com, clicking on the Deep Discount logo, and start going down the rabbit hole of shopping. So, new week, Mr. Bennett?
Yes, Mr. Nash, a new week. I had a project over the weekend. I thought of you because I know when you were little, your mom said you used to like to tinker with things, take things apart and figure out how they work. So I had a gas grill, a Weber gas grill that, I've always had Weber gas grills. You still use charcoal, right?
Bob insists. Yeah.
Well, I might agree with Bob. So I've had these Weber grills for, probably 20, 30 years since I've owned a house, and I've never had an issue. But this one particular one, of course, it's newer. Nothing new seems to work long. I've only had about 4 years, and there's 3 burners, and only one of them works. So I went online and looked at YouTube.
And on the 3, they're at the bottom of they're like 3 distinct round
3 gas
burners?
pipes. Right.
Okay.
So I went online to the YouTubes and found how to fix them. There was somebody called the Grill Girl, and then there was also somebody from Weber. And so I followed the instructions, and I took the thing apart. And it's now in my backyard, our back deck, all in pieces. Everything's in pieces. And
disassembled, right?
Disassembled. And it said I was supposed to take some of it said that the cross tubes were clogged. They figured this is why it didn't light. And all I needed to do was to stick these tubes in vinegar and baking soda.
Oh.
And then maybe clean them out a little bit. So anyway, right now we have quite a mess in the back. The amount of, I've never seen so much, the grill was filthy, which has never happened before. I don't quite understand what's happened. I usually let it run after I cook to burn the stuff off. But I had to go online and order this piece. And while I was on there, I could not believe how much, so this grill cost probably $600. So this little hanging basket for rolls you would put on to warm them, I was just going to toss it away. Well, I'm looking at it here, a part's $61 for that little piece. So this little cross tube thing was close to $50, but I was able to find it from a third-party seller in Florida called the Grill Master or something. So I picked it up for about $30, and it's supposed to come here. We'll see if I can get the grill going. But I ended up having to bring the stuff inside and cook it in the house, which made quite a mess, which I got in trouble for.
Yeah, Bob has been a fan of charcoal. Specifically, our friend Trace turned us on to these like wood chips that I think are
like hickory.
Yes, exactly, like hickory wood chips or something. And I like the smell of them. But we don't do a lot of grilling outside, so it was one of those things where now we got the charcoal, and I'm not allowed to really do much with it. Bob, we have this thing that it's like a cylinder that we pack newspaper in. And then the charcoal, and it's like a heating chimney or something. It helps you light the grill and keep it lit.
So is Bob in charge? Bob's
in charge of that, yeah. But lately he's been more in favor of just broiling or using the oven.
He was in charge of the fireplace too, wasn't he?
Well, yes. I could build a fire, but he kind of takes charge of that, and there you go.
You stay in your lane.
I stay in my lane, yeah, I know. And so, hey, quick one for you. I saw this come in over the wire, and I thought it was really funny. Penthouses in North Korea are mainly for the unfortunate few. So in the topsy-turvy world we live in, and in the topsy-turvy world that appears to be North Korea, a penthouse is actually for the unfortunate, because if you live that high up, you probably have to walk every flight because the elevators are unreliable. And then my favorite one was reading that the water pressure is usually really poor, and unless they add extra equipment or something, you just don't get water at the upper floor, so you have to bring buckets of water up too. How ridiculous does that sound?
Well, Well, it's North Korea, John. You and I keep wanting to go. The State Department won't even let us, I don't think.
No.
I saw that you had sent that article over, and I started reading it, and they said that if you really want to live on one of the bottom floors, otherwise, one of the guys had a friend who said he had to walk 28 flights or
28
something.
floors.
It said it could take him an hour sometimes to bring everything up, which you just can't believe. So as I was poking around, and I'll have to post it to our Facebook page only because it's acting supreme, talking about chewing up the scenery. So Kim Jong-un, the dear leader, he gave one of these penthouse apartments to Ray Chun-hee, and she is the dear propagandist for the country. She's the lady in pink, and she had retired at like 79 years old. But they say that she doesn't. Nobody's been able to replace her. She's the crier in chief when somebody dies. She's she's crying. She's wearing the little pink dress. So he thought she's given so much to the country, he said. And she's one of the few privileged few that got one of these prestigious penthouses. And he's walking her through it. And in each room, she gets more dramatic and crying to her knees about what a beautiful pad this is. It looks like a hotel from the 60s that we would have looked at. But, for the North Koreans, it's pretty good digs. Now, I don't know if this old lady's going to have to walk up the steps, though. And I was reading this article you found, right? The elevators don't work. Twice a day they might work, they said.
But it's a topsy-turvy world that you would want to be on the ground floor. If you're really connected to the party and you got the bucks, you want to be on the ground floor because you don't have to walk up. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, I guess that would be how New York would operate if if we had no power or bad elevators, right?
What's up is down, right? In North Korea. You want the closest thing. Well, what are you going to look at in Pyongyang? What's the view? Half the time the lights are out. I mean, it's not like you'd be up there and see what a beautiful view. We're going to head over to the entertainment district and take in a show.
Or it's not like the time we were kicking off our national park tour with the VW all-track wagon, and Jay and Jason had us up to their beautiful apartment in Seattle, and we were on remember the deck we were on? We had cocktails, and you could see the sound and all the buildings. I mean. And the sunset. I get your point. Nothing's going on over there, right?
No, there's nothing to see. But yes, I'll post the tour of the penthouse with Ray Chin-hee because
Ray Chin-hee.
Yeah, she's the Walter Cronkite of Korea, North Korea. So yeah, that was a good article. I still really would like to. It's probably the last country on earth you can go to that you'd really feel like you went somewhere.
And what you mean by that is the last country on earth you would go to where you really felt like you went somewhere foreign,
right?
Because it's so different, right?
So going to be no Starbucks or McDonald's or anything there. So yeah, it'd be. I would like to do it. I always wanted to go to Russia. I wanted to go to Cuba. I've never made it to either of those places, but.
My mom and Jim did a cruise from St. Petersburg towards Moscow, one of those riverboat cruises. She loved it. This was years and years ago. I think it's going to be a long time before any of us are traveling over there because of all the stuff that's going on. But yeah, it would have been cool.
Cuba? Would you go to Cuba?
I would love to have gone, but I haven't. But I know people who have, and they used to go via Canada to Mexico and then over to. I guess that's how the Americans could go, right?
Yeah, you sneak in through a third party, right? And you want to go to somewhere like Haiti or Dominican Republic, where it's a little bit lax. You get through.
Mm-hmm. And then you get on. But they said Havana was like stepping back into The Godfather. Like there's scenes in The Godfather or Godfather 2 that take place in Havana. The old cars, the kind of colonial-looking hotels, but all those old cars are still there. I don't know how they keep them running. They had a great time. They said it was a really interesting culture and a cool country.
Yeah, our friends in Russia are bringing back the. I guess is it the Lada, the car of Russia, and
the car of Russia. Yeah.
Putin has told them to make it a little more Spartan because they can't get parts. They rely on an awful lot of parts. I believe Renault is one of the biggest investors or builder of the car, but they're going to do a very Spartan version. Which reminded me, there was a museum out in Oregon which we missed. I think it's either Oregon or Washington State. It's a Soviet vehicle museum.
Oh, that would be good.
That would be good. That would have been a good trip for you and I to take. So we'll have to see. I wonder how business is. Maybe we'll
Every car has 3 wheels. Yeah.
like it or not.
Like it or not, yeah. All right. With that, what caught your eye?
What caught your eye? Here's what Tim and John found.
So I was poking around, and this had popped up in the news. The headline, Jack Nicholson's axe from The Shining could fetch up to $90,000 at auction. So a rare prop axe swung by Jack Nicholson during the filming of some of the most memorable scenes in Kubrick's 1980 horror film, The Shining, is headed to auction. And the one picture, and the picture that I gave to John was the "Here's Johnny" when he busts through, which is one of the classic scenes and become one of the most recognizable movie scenes, they said, in history. And so the axe, did you ever hear anything about these axes before? Apparently some other ones have gone up for sale as well.
And they're from the movie. They're props, right?
They're from the movie. So the minimum bid on this one, it's through an auction house called Gotta Have Rock and Roll, and the minimum bid starts at $50,000. Bids started on April 20th, so you could go on there and bid. They expect it to reach somewhere between 60 and 90. Yet they did, and it comes in a shadow box for wall display. It's framed with photographs from the movie, and then gives a certificate of authenticity. This one is light, so they said that there's foam axes. There was foam axes made, and one recently sold for $57,600, and the wooden axe, these were firemen's axes, sold for $211,000 in 2019. They said there were dozens of these axes made for the movies, and the lighter ones are these foam ones that had partial foam and weren't just all metal. Were used when he was doing some of these, when Nicholson was doing some of these longer scenes in the maze, and he'd be running with the axe. Yeah. And so because the other axe was so heavy, I can't believe it was that heavy, but anyway, they did some of these lighter foam axes for some of these long scenes where he was running, particularly when he was trying to chase his son down in the maze at the end. And so you can go bid on that. It's a cool piece of Americana, I suppose, if you're a movie buff or fan of the movie. Then at the very end of the article, they had posted something that I thought was interesting. They said 148, the big number. They said that's how many reshoots were taken for a scene in which the hotel chef, Dick Halloran, and Torrance's son, Danny, were discussing their psychic abilities. And the director, Kubrick, had them do 148 takes. It said it holds the record for the most retakes of any scene or any dialogue for a movie, according to the Guinness Book of World Records. So he made him do it over and over and over again until it was just right to where he liked it. And they said that's how the "Here's Johnny" thing came in as well. When he would bust through into the bathroom, when Shelley Duvall's in the bathroom there and Nicholson's beating through, they were using different sort of lines, and they were feeding him lines, and they were doing this over and over and over again. And then he just blurted out, "Here's Johnny." And they're like, that's it. That's the one.
Print.
So,
yeah.
So anyway, you can get that axe, John, if you're looking for the Shining axe.
Movie prop memorabilia always intrigues me. And the fact that they made, foam or lightweight versions for him to drag around that topiary maze. Right. The end of the movie is so classic. And isn't The Shining one of your favorites?
It is. And it was funny. So even when, and I, you know it, right? You know the movie, You know what's going to happen, or at least you have even watching some of the clips, because I went down the rabbit hole a little bit, the little kid's on the big wheel and then he runs into the twins. I had chills again. It's just creepy. There's something that whatever they did, and I know it's coming. I know he's going to see the twins. I know what the twins look like, but it still creeped me out.
That's the ones where they're in front of the elevator doors, and then all the blood comes rushing out, right?
Come play with us.
Yeah, come play with us. And that's where he's riding that big wheel. Brr, carpet, floor, floor. Brr, brr.
Yeah. Great horror film.
It's a wonderful movie, and Kubrick's one of my favorite directors. And that number of takes, I'm glad you brought that up. He is famous for driving his actors crazy with trying to nail it perfectly.
Well, they said with the other point in this one article, they said Shelley Duvall she was angry because he isolated her and tried to keep her away from everybody to make her almost a little bit crazy herself, paranoid, which he thought would help her in the movie.
And it did.
Filming of the movie, yeah.
All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. All work and no play makes it. And she's flipping through the papers like, oh no, there's no novel here.
I always wonder why she never got the hell out of there. I mean, right when you're watching that thing, you're like, something's up, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. Would you have stayed around?
I would not have stayed around. But then again, how far down the mountain would they had to, like, to civilization? I mean, that the guy that came back on the snowcat had to have a snowcat to get back up there. So. So what caught my eye could not be any more different, but it is a interesting cultural thing, and that is that a train engineer was posthumously awarded 45 cents that he was docked while alive, and being the engineer of a train. So this guy, a Japanese train driver, he accused his company of unfairly deducting his pay after he caused a 1-minute delay in service.
Oh my God.
He has won his case in court and will be paid back 56 yen or 45 cents in wages, although the ruling came weeks after he died of an illness. Hirofumi Wada, who worked for West Japan Railway, was supposed to drive an empty train into a depot on June 2020. But he accidentally went to the wrong platform and started driving the train 1 minute later than scheduled, causing a delay in the train's departure. His employer argued he didn't work during that 1 minute and docked his pay. This is only in Japan, right? On Tuesday, a year after Wada sued the railway operator, the district court in the southern prefecture of Okayama ruled in favor of him and ordered West Japan Railway to return the 45 cents in reduced pay to the driver, who died on April 3rd of an unspecified ailment at the age of 59. It dismissed Wada's additional claim of 2.2 million yen, claiming that no, it was only going to take care of this issue here. The Japanese railways pride themselves, and Tim could tell you on this, on punctuality, but they're also known for having severe working conditions. So many of us may remember from a few years ago, there have been a couple of incidences many years. In 2005, a speeding West Japan Railway train derailed and rammed into a residential tower in southern Hyogo Prefecture, killing 105 people. And when they investigated that, the 23-year-old driver who was killed in the crash was likely going over the limit on a curve because he feared he was running late. So this is just one of those things where I just think, like, the maniacal, fixation on these trains run on time kind of thing leads to this guy being accused of not working for 60 seconds, of which is worth 45 cents. He gets it back after he's dead, but I mean, all his coworkers are pleased that he won this case because he was an engineer who apparently always looked out for the juniors in his team. The guys that were coming up through the ranks. Yeah. And but you're shaking your head because you've experienced this, right?
Well, the Japanese major in the minors. I mean, it's very much a society of rules and order in many regards. I remember getting a bus ticket out of Narita Airport I was with Richard Marshall, and the bus ticket was for 2:12 in like 20 seconds. Like, it had the time written out, and so the bus pulls up and we were going into downtown Tokyo, and a bus pulls up at 2:10. So Richard and I go to get on, and we get pushed and shoved aside. Not your bus. We're like, no, this is our bus. We're figuring it's 2:10. That's the 2:12 bus. No, you're the 2:12 bus. 2:12, 20 seconds. Richard and I are looking at each other. We're like, we don't want to miss this bus. We've already flown a day and a half. You know what it's like to get there. But sure enough, within 2:12 and 17 seconds, another bus pulls in. And we were just like, oh my gosh. And then another time we had same situation. We had gone, we were trying to get to an event and we were running early. They anticipated traffic. So they get off the highway and we start doing a loop-de-loop around the Emperor's Palace. We're like, what is this? We're in the middle of this. Then we get on the highway and like the breakdown lane going about 23 miles per hour. They had done the math. And finally we said, we can get there early. It's okay. We'll do other things. No, we are supposed to be there at 11. This will get us there at 10:50. So they needed to chew up these 10 minutes, and they were trying to figure out a way to do it because the schedule said we were there at 11, not at 10:50.
Yeah.
But then another final thing is when we were allowed to buy and expense the washer fluid for the car, for the windshield wipers. But because they were on the metric system, and we, of course, use gallons, right, instead of liters, they would only reimburse us 7/8 of the cost of the washer fluid because you could not use it all. And you were probably taking the extra and putting it in your wife's car.
In your own car, yeah.
No, they say your wife's car.
That's a maniacal obsession with measures and time. Yeah, that's...
So I love that one. But 45 cents, can you imagine?
45 yen. Yeah, 56 yen, 45 cents, and it's posthumously given. Poor guy. I wonder what he passed away from. 59 is pretty young, in my opinion. I think that's how old he was.
I had an employee that came to me, said his paycheck was 23 cents short.
I remember this story. I love this story.
And he wanted it fixed because he had done the compounded interest over X amount of years of how much money he would be out by the time he retired. And I flipped a quarter at him. Took it out of my pocket. I didn't have time. And I said, and then of course he went to HR and I got reprimanded. But I said, I said, go down and talk to them about it. I don't control the payroll, but well, I need your support on this. And I'm 23 cents short. I never checked I guess I probably should have checked. Maybe I was docked 23 cents. Maybe I've got a couple million sitting.
Didn't he have some? He did this for like how many? Like,
oh yeah.
Was it only that, or was it a number of years?
He dragged it out to say, by the time I retire, this will equate to 200. I mean, he had some crazy number that went out, and I was like, Jeff, go down and talk to someone about it. But
here's
I'm
a quarter.
Not the guy. Yeah, and I was, bing. He said, what
On your way back,
what are you going to do? Here's a quarter.
On your way back from the drugstore, bring me an atomic fireball with the quarter I'm giving you, right? Because that's what you're talking about. It's like petty candy money, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, petty candy money. So that was it. So that caught your eye. I love that one. Where'd you find that? Do you remember?
I think it was Quartz was the publication I was looking at. Yeah,
you have some new places
feeds.
You're finding material. Yeah. Some of mine dry up sometimes, and I'm not happy with them.
Tim, you and I have always said it's riches one week and it's drought the next, right? Rain and drought.
So we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we have a business birthday, and then we also have the 5 most banned LGBTQ books in the country, and these are for schools, I guess, banned in the schools that John had mentioned earlier. So we'll reveal those 5 titles as well. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com. Now back to The Focus Group with Tim and John. Available pretty much everywhere.
Welcome back to The Focus Group. John Nash with my co-host and good friend, Mr. Tim Bennett. As Tim said before we went to break, second half of the show, we're going to do a business birthday and the 5 most banned LGBTQ books in America. Gotta get that right. But without further ado, let's do business birthday.
Everyone does celebrity birthday greetings, but the Focus Group is the only show in the universe that celebrates business birthdays.
So our business birthday today is a gentleman named Wallace Carothers. And I like Carothers, Carothers. Born April 27th, 1896. He died April 29th, 1937, at 41 years old. He was an American chemist, inventor, and he led the organic chemistry area at DuPont, but was credited with the invention of nylon as well as neoprene. You know that neoprene's that thick, rubbery...
Like for scuba diving kind of thing.
Yeah. The what do they call that? Artificial? It's not artificial. Rubber. I don't know what the exact word would be. But he was a group leader at DuPont's experimental station, and DuPont, which is a chemical company based in Wilmington, Delaware, they had done a lot of research and tried to hire a lot of academics. And Carothers was one of the academics that they had hired out of Harvard. Previous to that, he was in Illinois. He had a pretty robust job within academia where he was an organic chemist. And DuPont was trying to figure out if there was a way that they could monetize some of this research that they were doing involving chemicals and so forth. And then on some of these projects that people were working on, if they could actually have a commercial value to them. And so they wanted to bring in some of these chemists that could take some of the projects that were either failures or had found other uses for and see if there was a commercial way to use them. The history of him, or the bio as I pulled it up, was very heavily texted, or texts with scientific jargon of he did this, he did that, split the atom to do this, which quite frankly I kind of glazed over. But the
he changed the chemical, the atomic structure,
right, and then
right?
then it would say, but at high temperature it would melt, and they half the words I couldn't pronounce. But they finally, DuPont executive named Hamilton Bradshaw had gone up to Harvard and convinced Carothers to leave Harvard and come down to DuPont. And so they offered him $500 a month compared to what he was making as head of the organic chemistry area at Harvard. For $267 a month is what he was making at Harvard in 1930, I believe it was 1927. So late 20s, early 30s. This is what Harvard was paying. $267 a month.
Doesn't sound like a lot. No.
I don't either. I don't think 500 is a lot either, but I guess that was a pretty good pay bump. So he ran this, what they called the experimental station. He lived with three other guys that they called the Whiskey Village, because they were all bachelors. And apparently they did lots of drinking and went out carousing. But Carothers never would do that. He was a bit of a loner, and they said horribly, horribly depressed. He was always depressed, always upset, never felt right, constantly was writing letters to his friends. He went to a small school in Missouri called Tarkio, and would constantly write letters back to friends that he had known from there and from his fraternity, saying how he just didn't fit in. He didn't feel like the type that would want to go out and carouse and drink and meet the ladies and so forth and so on. But he ended up having a relationship with a married woman, which his family was not happy about. And so he had to break that off. So he would kind of bury himself in work, but he would disappear. And he would disappear for weeks on end. Sometimes they wouldn't know where he was, and they'd find him in some psychiatric hospital in Baltimore, or he had a psychiatrist in Philly he would go see and talk to.
Wow. And
so they said so in between all this, so he was developing projects and products, and that's how they came up with the invention of nylon. And they said this was 1934. It was the most productive time of his research. He eventually invented nylon, but he disappeared again. He didn't work. No one knew where he was. He had found a small clinic outside of the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. And DuPont would get him, bring him back again, and he'd continue to work. But finally, his sister had died of pneumonia, I believe. And this was 1937. He couldn't get over it. He went out to Chicago, attended her funeral. They said he always had a cyanide tablet attached to his watch. And the thought that
you serious?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so these two psychiatrists took him on a long hike thinking that would help him. And he ended up marrying another woman. But after this long hike, after these two psychiatrists thought a long hike would do him good in the Alps, he disappeared again. And he went back living with the boys at the Whiskey Village, or Whiskey Acres, they called it, and outside of Wilmington. And she just finally said to the psychiatrist, I can't take it anymore. I can't care for him. And
wow.
The psychiatrist said, you're absolutely right. You won't be able to care for him. So he went into work on April 28th, 1937. He went to the experimental station at DuPont. He then committed suicide in a hotel room in Philadelphia the next day by ingesting chemicals. No note was found.
Oh, my God.
Kind of a sad life at 41 years old. God only knows how troubled he was. You think about it, mental health care in the 20s and 30s. They said he always felt different and like an outcast and never part of the social norms of people carousing and doing what they were doing. He just always felt different.
So he invented nylon at in 1934, and only 3 years later he passes away.
Yeah, kills himself.
Wow.
He said it was, the nylon and neoprene. He had played with lots of the chemical makeups of things that they were, experimenting with in this lab, and but never really got to see the fruits of, obviously, the nylon has changed the world, and other types of polyester they mention as well that came out of this invention, but never was able to see the success of it just because he was so troubled mentally. And with depression,
what a shame!
Chronic depression.
What a shame!
Yeah, probably one of our saddest, and in a long time that I remember, demise of our business birthday. Usually, some of these people die of old age with lots of coin. But
it was interesting.
This was one that had a tragic ending.
When you were reading about him, he was aware enough of his condition that he would disappear to everybody else. He disappeared, but he would go to a clinic or something to try to get some relief, right?
Right. Yeah, he would. They said there was a number of letters that they listed of where he had written to friends and, as I said, former associates about his depression, and he would reach out to them and say, "I can't do this anymore. I don't know what's wrong with me. I need help." And they did try to get him help. Or he himself went to 2 different clinics, one in Baltimore, one at Johns Hopkins, and one up in Philadelphia at Hospital Pennsylvania. But he would just write these long letters of just, when you read them, you're just like, oh my gosh! I mean,
breaks your heart.
Yeah,
right.
He said, I'm living out here in the country with other bachelors. I'm not socially inclined. They all seem to want to go out in tall hats and white ties. That's not me. My ancient custom is to sit sullenly at home. And he said he kept a capsule of cyanide attached to his watch chain.
That one by itself, the cyanide capsule, just waiting. Wow.
He said DuPont also wanted him to go speak a lot at different organizations, and he had to do something up in New Haven. And he said that he just absolutely hated it. He didn't like that public recognition or being put forward like that. He said it would ruin him from nerves, and he just never felt comfortable doing it, which would lead him to drink. So
wow. Yes, anyway. That was a sad, amazing invention from an inventor who had a troubled life, right? And at 41.
He had mental health issues that, while recognized, probably we didn't know enough about it to treat it properly.
Well, there's a lot, back then, huge amounts of stigma. Even today, there's still a lot of stigma about mental health issues. So, Hey, at the start of the broadcast, we talked about the 5 most banned LGBTQ books in America today, and they're all young adult books, and we're going to talk about them now. So this article came to us from Queerty, and the number 1 book, so, we've been talking about this on our other podcast, TFG Unbuttoned, but Florida is the latest to, begin drawing back or pulling back or rolling back the ability to even speak about things that are LGBTQ if it upsets a parent or something. But in many ways, this book banning thing bothers me even more because a book is a choice. You don't have to read a book. You don't have to take it out of the library. You don't have to do anything. You could read whatever you want to read. So just preemptively removing a piece of literature that could help somebody or guide them to understand their personality or their journey always is a head scratcher to me. But the first book here that has been banned is called Gender Queer, and it's a book by, what's the author's name? Maya Kobare. Is that how I pronounce her name? I hope I'm not butchering it. Kobabe, sorry.
Yeah, Kobabe, but I'm not so sure about the first name. Is it Maya? I guess.
Maya, M-A-I-A, Maya Kobabe. Yeah. It's a graphic novel, a deeply honest graphic novel, covers their experience of discovering and accepting that they are both non-binary and asexual. However, the book also doubles as an instructive guide for those exploring those identities. In it, Kobabe discusses their journey toward a less gendered world where they felt free from social gender expectations and more confident about expressing their gender identity. And the author says, by high school, I had met multiple out gay, lesbian, and bisexual people, but I didn't meet out an out trans or non-binary person until I was in grad school. And the only place I had access to information and stories about transgendered people was in media, mainly in books, which is what I said before. Like, you don't normally encounter this stuff in the you have to seek out this kind of literature, but it's great that it's there. So that's the first book that they've banned. I've heard about it. I've not read it myself, but that was the first one up.
Yeah. The second one is called Boys Aren't Blue by George Johnson. And it's a memoir manifesto. Johnson writes personal essays about his experiences growing up black and queer in the South. And what it also does is it shows a black family being very supportive of their queer child, something that you rarely see depicted or disclosed in the media. And it ultimately encourages the readers to shed society's toxic masculinity and embrace themselves fully. So again, when there's been lots of studies done, and John and I are currently working on a project around Generation Z, and where people are really exploring different ways of expressing themselves from gender or whether they're trans or non-binary and so forth. But this is just simply this author George Johnson's memoir about what his experience was.
Yeah.
And again, if you could see yourself there in the book, as you said, what's the harm? If somebody wants to read about what this guy went through, George Johnson, about growing up and being accepted because he accepted himself, I don't see where there's an issue there. But okay.
Neither do I. If it's not part of some curriculum, it's not like reading Johnny Tremaine or whatever we read when we were kids. The third book out of the 5 most banned books is a book by Jonathan Evison called Lawn Boy. And Mike Munoz is a poor Mexican 22-year-old high school grad who supports his disabled brother and family by working as a landscaper in Washington State. When he quits a terrible job in a dramatic fashion, he's forced to confront what he really wants out of life. He then goes through a series of questionable mentors and decisions while also coming to terms with his gayness. Evanson wrote the book for an adult audience. Indeed, his narrator speaks frankly about a formative sexual experience he had with another boy during their youth. And later, Evanson, the author, actually says, I am quite confident that not a single person threatening me, because a lot of these authors are getting hate mail, right, things just spewed in their direction mindlessly. So I'm quite confident that not a single person threatening me or lobbying to ban my book even read a single passage of Lawn Boy beyond those few isolated passages read on the TikTok video. That's all it took to mobilize their blind hatred and zealous call to arms to ban my book. They didn't even read it. That's what we're still up against today, a streak of anti-intellectualism that runs so deep in America that people feel they no longer need to inform themselves before they make the decision to ban a book or seek to destroy the reputation of a father of 3. That was one of the more powerful ones in this section. We're dealing with these 5 most banned books in America. I mean, it's just, he's got a point. If you want to knock something, at least understand what you're arguing, right?
Right. Or if you want to debate something, be informed about what you're debating so that you at least have another point of view rather than, I don't want to hear about it.
Or you're co-opting, you've been force-fed, or you've co-opted someone's point of view and you made it your own without even knowing why. Yeah.
Number 4 is called Beyond Magenta, Transgender Teens Speak Out by Susan Cucklin. And the author here, she interviewed 6 people. She said 2 trans feminine people, 2 trans masculine people, and 2 non-binary people. And they came from different nationalities as well as different socioeconomic and familial backgrounds, and talked to them about them coming to terms with their gender identity. And probably a lot like the book John just mentioned, the issue here is that, her fear is with the banning of this is that this is where knowledge becomes danger to the people that are scared about letting people find out about people different than you. And it's this whole, I think the whole theme of this to me was this not allowing people to either educate themselves or not becoming educated about what else is happening, particularly now in society. And that's dangerous. And that's what her fear is in the ban of this one, is that people are frightened because they don't understand it, but they also don't want to learn about it.
Just push it away. I don't want to know. Just push it away. Yeah. It's crazy. And our last book out of the 5 most banned LGBTQ books in America this book is Gay by Juno Dawson. Dawson's book primarily serves as an explainer for gay, lesbian, cisgender people and their allies, offering a starting place for questions about sex, culture, and politics. While the book doesn't delve very deeply into bisexuality, asexuality, transgender, non-binary, women's issues, and other complexities, it ultimately encourages readers to focus on being true to themselves and not sticking too closely to any labels that feel wrong. And here's what the author says, Juno Dawson. I see myself as a storyteller. I think it's a universal language we all speak, and stories have the power to unite us as a race. It's unthinkable that Anne Frank's diary was once a banned text. The sheer concept of challenging or banning books is so ludicrous, I can't really engage with that. So he sums up, in my opinion, this author, what I would say about that, which is, when you think that the Diary of Anne Frank used to be a banned book or a banned text, and now we hold it up as an example of amazing courage and grace in hiding from the Nazis in the Netherlands. People make pilgrimages to Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam. So I do think it's ludicrous. Why ban a book? You don't have to read it just because it sits on a shelf. What's the threat, right?
Well, this all reminds me of this book banning reminds me of a lot of the teachings of some religions where you don't want the people to be educated because you don't want them to question your doctrine, right?
Correct.
So if you keep the masses stupid, which is why some of these authoritarian countries want to control media or control what people hear or what they consume, is dangerous. I mean, it reminds me of, and I've said this a million times, the Jehovah's Witnesses. They don't want you to go beyond a certain grade of school. And, you and I have always said if we had a telemarketing company for cold calling, we'd hire witnesses because they're used to, they're accustomed to the rejection.
Relentless.
Keep going. Eventually, right? Eventually, even a blind squirrel finds a nut. So they're going to sell something. But yeah, you keep the masses stupid and you're able to control them. And that's what I think the danger is here, because if these books are banned, what's next? And I don't think anybody thinks that far down the path.
No, and Tim, I'm sure that you had an experience like this in Philadelphia. In when I first graduated school and moved to the city and came out, one of my favorite bookstores here in New York City was called A Different Light, and it was a gay bookstore, and it was one of the few places you can go to get recommendations for new literature. And what a revelation to read books by authors who were either gay or included gay characters, thoughtfully, sensibly, touching, touching depictions of life. It was like a revelatory. Now, some of these books may have existed in a school library, but I didn't know about it back then. So yeah, this whole idea of banning books is, I love reading, I love books, and I love how they share knowledge. The idea that you're clamping down simply because you don't like the subject matter or the people it's directed to, or that it's going to change society. It just seems like we live in a very fear-based culture. I mean, we've always been a fear-based species, but like I'm afraid of getting eaten by a lion. I got to run. I might not be,
Right.
This is getting to a fevered pitch. The culture wars, though, they're ridiculous. They're ridiculous because we're talking about our neighbors, our brothers, our sisters. This is not some alien invasion. The culture wars are affecting us, right?
Yeah. No, it's sad. So what a lot of people are doing, I've seen where people are actually buying these books and donating them to schools, or Amazon has a whole area where you can actually buy
Seriously?
some of these books. Yeah. And I've read some people in central Pennsylvania that actually had a book fair with all of these books plus countless others that were on the list to be banned in certain states for people to come buy them and or donate them and give them for free. So thank God to those of us in the country that are still out there with putting up the fight. So as Michelangelo Signorelli has told us many times, it's not over.
Not over.
Mr. Nash.
No.
Right. So on that happy note, between the suicide of the business birthday and the books that are banned, thanks for joining us today. We appreciate you spending time with us. Be sure to also catch our podcast, which is TFG Unbuttoned, which is released every Tuesday morning, and you can find all of our media housed at focusgroupradio.com or on our Facebook page, which is Focus Group Radio, as well as our stream on YouTube, which is also by the same name. And pretty much anywhere, if you just type in Focus Group Radio, you'll find, whether it's on Spotify or Amazon or where else are we? iHeart, TuneIn, you name it, we're there pretty much, aren't we, Mr. Nash?
Yeah, we're all free.
All free. Free. So remember, don't text and drive, arrive alive. Be careful out there as people are starting to travel, whether it's for spring break or getting ready for the summer season. Put your phone down when you're driving. There's no need to have it on. And have a good week. We'll see you on Tuesday. Take care.
It's The Focus Group with Tim Bennett and John Nash. Accessible on all platforms. Subscribe, like, and rate us on your platform of choice. Learn more at focusgroupradio.com.
That was a stunning focus group.